Hello, and welcome to Narrative Tales. In today's video, I interview Akshara Srivastava and learn about her experiences in journalism. Well, let's start with your schooling then. Could you just walk me through your schooling and some of your favorite subjects?
Schooling was fun, I think. I think my favorite subject was English. Later on, it was English and psychology, but it was, I think, it wasn't difficult. I think I was a fun, I used to enjoy going to school and had a good set of friends eventually. Was very social, was someone who took a part in a lot of co-curricular activities, was absolutely horrible in mathematics and anything related. So physics, chemistry was, quite bad at it. Would find reasons to skip those classes some way or the other. But I think English classes were where I think I truly shone, and yeah.
Yeah. So could you describe to me how you picked a college and how college applications were?
So what happens here in India, because I stay in Delhi, Delhi University is, the only university that you really think about. I wanted to study journalism because I wanted to be a journalist since I was a child. But my parents convinced me to not do a journalism degree. Uh, you could be a journalist studying whatever. So it's better to do something more academic. And that's when I realized that the only other option that I had was English literature, and there was no better place for English literature in India than to study in Delhi University here. So what happens is, you have a cutoff list that comes out. You give your exams in school, the passing out exams, they're called the 12th board exams, and whatever percentage that you get there, Delhi University releases a cutoff. There are independent colleges, over 50 colleges, and but I was not sure how much I'd end up scoring in my 12th board. So I also applied through, there's a quota called the extracurricular activity quota. I also tried to go in through a debating and a creative writing quota for those societies that different colleges have. Almost made it to one, but didn't get the course of my choice. I was getting something else, which I didn't want to study. So I waited it out. And then I got through one of the colleges here in North Campus. It's called STTP Khalsa College. So that's pretty much how the process was. It was very nerve wracking, of course, but glad I managed through that.
Yeah, so you're talking about some extracurriculars, right? What all extracurriculars did you do?
Eventually in college I did, I so Delhi University had this, because I was so interested in journalism always. I started working for a lot of these campus newspapers. uh, Started off with one, and then it has one of the biggest independently run by the students. There's a newspaper, it's called DU Beat, and that's what I ended up joining in my second semester, I think. And I worked for DU Beat for, I think, 2 years before I left. I left in my third year because I wanted to concentrate, on what I was studying. But yeah, I think that was the only. I tried joining the DepSoc in college. I remember wasn't a lot of fun, so I left. And anyway, with an academic course and a full time, it was almost like a job, and I enjoyed it so much because I used to be out and about, just looking for stories everywhere around the campus, and so I think it was almost like a full time job, and I didn't have time for anything else. Yeah.
Yeah. So I see how that's very close to journalism, right? But other
Yeah.
than professionally, how do you think your hobbies appear just in your personality or socially?
Honestly, I've been thinking about that a lot, and I realized that I don't have a lot of hobbies that are not work adjacent, and I'm trying to build that. So I'm very big on reading, but I make it a point to read only fiction because work is literally non-fiction, right? And so that I enjoy watching a few films here and there, but I think with Instagram, things have changed on how you spend your free time. But a lot of my hobbies, I'm not somebody who's into dancing or who sings. I've never inculcated those, um, I don't know, interests in me, because I was always the kind of child who would read under a blanket with a torchlight. I was just so hungry for what I was reading. So I think, yeah, the only hobbies I have are work adjacent for some reason. But I'm not complaining. It's fun.
Yeah, yeah. So could you describe to me how you got your first job?
It was fairly simple, actually. After my undergrad, I was studying journalism. I tried to do a 1 year diploma course for journalism. It's called the Asian College of Journalism in Chennai. And I went through the whole placements process. It was very funny because um, it was, my first job was with this newspaper called the Indian Express. And I wrote the test at the beginning of when the placement season began, and by the end of it, they hadn't come back with the results. So it was very, very scary, I remember. And in my desperation, I remember I tried to sit for, you know, um, interviews of news channels, and that I didn't necessarily align with. News channels who I don't think they do the right thing. They do the right kind of journal. I don't think they do journalism at all. And then I remember screwing those papers up on purpose because I didn't want to be called in for the next round. But I'm very glad that Indian Express came through. And yeah, and that's how I got my first job. That it was fairly a simple process, actually.
Yeah. So I'm pretty new to like the field of journalism in general. Could you just describe to
Okay.
me like the progress path, what roles there are, or maybe like a hierarchy system for jobs?
Okay. So when you join any newspaper or TV channel, you could either be a reporter, which is a cub reporter. That's how you start. Or you could be on the desk, which is, so there are two functions to it. One person's out there finding stories and writing them. And then there are other people who get those stories from those people. I've written a story, say, suppose, and you're my editor, essentially. And what you'll do is you'll go through my story, you'll correct for grammar, you'll correct for words, you'll correct for, biases, all of that. And that's how the hierarchy is essentially. So it's not a hierarchy, it's like more lateral. So there are reporters and there are people on the edit desks, and that's how you move up. So in reporters, there are no set hierarchies, so to say. There are no set designations, except that the topmost person in any newsroom is the editor in chief or the managing editor. And then you start going down. There's the associate editor, senior associate editor, that kind of a thing. I started off on the desk as a sub editor, which means I was editing stories that other people wrote, and we call them stories and not news articles, because news articles are what get published eventually. um, but then I think 2 years down the line, 2.5 years down the line, I moved to writing, because that's a role that I enjoy more, I think. Yeah.
So, within writing, is there specific topics you specialize in?
Yes, I write for a business newspaper. So I write on the consumer vertical, on the consumer sector in India. So I write on the FMCG sector, which is fast moving essential goods, which is essentially, your noodles, your coffee, your tea, your soaps, detergent powders, that kind of a thing. I write on the travel and hospitality sectors, and I write on retail. So, all of us, it's called a beat, having a beat. So all of us have our own specific beats in my office, because we're a business paper. We look at the business side of things mostly. We don't. So we have people looking at infrastructure. We have people looking at the finance ministry, the commerce
Sorry.
ministry, and what else? We have businesses in law. We also have aviation sector. So many other things that you could write about. Everything is a business essentially now. Healthcare, all of that. Right? So yeah.
Yeah. So, um, do you think that nowadays there's more bias in journalism?
Sorry, I didn't catch your question.
So nowadays, do you think there's more bias in journalism? And as a consumer, how do you think we should detect and avoid bias?
Um, I do think that there is absolutely, I think there is a little more bias in how things are reported and how things are presented. We try our best to, there are some organizations that are bereft, I would like to say, who do not allow bias to get into the way they report, or to get into the way, that they put out stories into the world. But there are some still which have, completely, and I think in India, the bias is more around, what's happening with the government. So absolutely, and I think there are news channels, especially I think, who have you know s- really aligned themselves politically to a certain sect, a certain sect, and that's how they like to go about things.
Yeah, yeah. So as a consumer, how do you think we should handle bias, especially when it's so well? It's very it exists basically everywhere in all the content we consume.
I think it's very important to constantly question everything that you're coming across. You have to think of intentions and motives. You have to understand, where things are coming from and why they might be happening. Um, no, I'm not saying we should all believe random conspiracy theories, but I think it's as standard practice as a consumer. I think it's always a good idea to just question whatever you're reading, whatever you have to look for things. You cannot take anything that is written as the gospel truth. You have to understand that there are sides to things. You have to understand, you have to see. I will take the example of a news report. You have to, when someone says something is happening, you have to have outside voices corroborating what is happening. Otherwise there is a bias. You have to, four independent people, say suppose, have to say the same thing for it to mean something. Otherwise, if I've just written something without corroborating it with outside voices, it does, there's absolutely a bias there. So I think it's standard practice is good, that you have to question everything. You have to try and understand the motive behind it, whether it's a video on a, on your Instagram, where you're thinking, is this AI, is this not AI? I think that is just something that you need to have in your mind, now more than ever, I think.
Yeah. This is especially true with the age of like social media and making posts for the sake of entertainment and engagement. Speaking of
Exactly,
which,
yeah.
how do you think social media plays a role in journalism? Like, especially with like misinformation and disinformation?
I think it's a double-edged sword. um, it's good because, things are that much more faster. You can get things out that much more um, quickly. But it also is prone to, because it's prone to so many voices and, so many people coming in, especially in India. You have these troll armies, who sort of start attacking you online. um, but social media, I think, overall, I think it's a good democratic tool. It gives everyone, um, the ability to voice their opinions, at least. But the scary part is, that everyone thinks that they're an expert on a subject that they just read about 2 days ago. So you have to filter out the serious people from the non-serious people, and you just have to understand that, some people are just talking because they can talk. But I do think social media is a good thing overall. Is a good tool overall for journalism as well. It helps you find more stories. I think it introduces you to worlds that you've not seen before. but you have to be, I mean, as a journalist who is on social media myself, I'm very cautious of what I read on the internet and how I approach it. It's not instantly a story idea. It's not instantly that I want to probe something. You have to take your time with things. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And this also raises a question of like freedom of speech within media specifically, whereas whether that means like organizations having freedom of speech to post or publish whatever they want. What do you think for that matter? Like, do in media should there be full freedom of speech?
Absolutely, it's the fourth pillar of democracy for a reason. Um, they're the ones who hold people in positions of power accountable. I believe, and I come from the school of thought, that media organizations should be anti establishment in nature, should question those in power, um, should call out practices that are wrong, and should have absolute freedom of speech to report and write and say what they're seeing around themselves without being told um, what you know they should write and how they should write it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Definitely if you go with the path that trying to prevent all misinformation by trying to ban free speech in a sense, it's definitely a slippery slope about who you're giving that authority to.
Absolutely.
So, on a bit of a different topic, what do you think about the difference in journalism in India and in America?
I think the best part is that the American journalists um, have so much immunity. The Constitution gives them so much immunity to call out those in power. um, you know I think that is that's the biggest difference, I feel. I think reporters, writers everywhere are very hardworking. I think they're all, we all have a hunger for stories. We are all very curious people. That's why we are in the profession. I know journalists, who work long into nights, um, go to such extreme lengths to be able to get a story and to just get a source who can confirm a thing or deny a thing, whatever. But I think the basic difference, I think, is that the Constitution in the U.S. Constitution gives journalists so much more immunity than we can ever hope to get. Yeah.
Could you explain to me, like in India? So yeah, like if there isn't the constitution that gives the full immunity, freedom of speech, how does it function? Especially when something is published that the government or someone else wants to be taken down.
I honestly don't know that because I've never faced it so harm. Uh, but I think what happens is, at least the organizations that I've worked for, I have never really told the line like that, I believe. Um, they don't, we don't unpublish anything, honestly. We've had, we always, what you do is you bring out a corrigendum and you tell them that, okay, this is what we wrote and this is what the government or whoever, so and so, even if it's a private entity, has this to say about it. But you do not take down what you publish, mostly. I think I've never heard of an instance, at least in the organizations that I've worked in, where we've had to take down something because of pressure from the government. Yeah.
Yeah. So to switch topics a little, we were touching on this a little bit before, but how do you think AI plays a role in journalism, or at least in one sense, as a tool for writers?
People like to believe that it helps. I like to believe that it kills all creativity. It's now pre-installed in your Gmails or whatever, and that's now every time I'm filing a story, there's a blue line under my sentences where AI is suggesting how I should rephrase a sentence and I hate it because I think it kills all individual writing style. I think things are becoming a lot more homogeneous that way. When people write with AI, maybe for people who shoot videos, people who create videos, might be really helpful for them. These are tools. I'm somebody who's very averse to new technology any which way, so I am, I'll always take a sort of a reserved opinion about these things. But as a writer, I'm not very enthused with the idea of AI. I don't think it helps my work. I think it makes my work more difficult. And I do believe that it genuinely kills all individual writing style. The M dashes, for example. I love using the M dash. I've been using the M dash since I started writing, and now suddenly I'm very conscious when I put an M dash in a story where I think that, oh, maybe someone will think that I've used AI to write it. When I haven't, and I don't like using AI, but that's not the point. The point is that it's forcing me to change how something that comes naturally to me and not necessarily for the better. So yeah, not a fan of AI. But I do think, I mean, if I put myself aside and I think of it on a larger level, I do think it helps people. Especially areas that require more technical um, things. I had a friend who recently made a song out of AI. He'd always wanted to make a song but never could, and now he's made a song. So that's good for him. Great. Another tool for journalists, I think it can help you research more, but you have to be very intelligent while using AI. You have to filter through. You have to check everything that ChatGPT is trying to tell you, because a lot of the times, what it also tells you is absolutely imagined. It
Yeah.
doesn't exist. So yeah.
Yeah, AI hallucinations.
Yeah.
It's interesting you brought up the thing with AI changing the way you write in terms of like having blue squiggles under all of the sentences, because it reminds me that Google Docs and a lot of other tools that have autocorrect have changed from having like a textbook or a dictionary on how to correct spelling mistakes and grammatical mistakes, and have switched to an AI model, which is interesting to imagine because it basically means if everyone were to follow it, it would just it would turn all the writing styles into one eventually at some point. It's interesting to hear.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. Exactly, yeah.
yeah. And we also learn in the school. I'm glad my school is pretty like it teaches a lot about AI. So we also learn in school like we can try to use AI for research, but we have to be sure to fact check it because
Right.
ChatGPT is just I mean, it's basically a yes bot, right? It has to confirm everything you say. So, yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So, along with just like as a tool for writers, there's also the other side of AI being AI generated content, right? Especially in social media, like you're saying, misinformation. How do you like, how often do you see that, first of all, like AI generated content?
Very often. The only social media that I use is Twitter and Instagram. And Twitter, of course, you started seeing Grok everywhere, and people asking Grok verify this, Grok change this to that, whatever. But on Instagram specifically, there's massive AI. You have AI influencers. I don't know if this is happening where you stay, but what all of us here were starting to get were a lot of these AI vegetable, humanized vegetable videos. Um, so it's basically just videos of vegetables being humanized and marrying on each other and cheating. Human emotions in veggies, and it was just sick. But everybody was getting it. I have friends living in Canada and London who have getting the same content. So that's weird because how synced are your algorithms? I don't understand. I don't understand how this works. But I think my way of dealing with it is to just scroll past and not I'm forgetting the word, but you don't interact with it for too long, because then I think your algorithm feels that this is something that you enjoy watching and you want to keep watching more of it. But there is a lot more AI generated content. I see people now also taking shortcuts, Instagram pages which would, put out um, whatever videos with some voiceovers. Now voiceovers are all AI voiceovers. So um, that kind of a thing. I think it's that's what I'm saying. It's a very democratic tool. It allows people to do a lot more, a lot than they were able to do it far more quickly. So I think it's a great tool for them, people who want to monetize the content that they make, because that's how much more efficient it makes them. But I do believe that it's you have to be really, really careful in using AI, because otherwise it's all sick stuff like veggies cheating on each other.
Yeah, AI generated content definitely has a lot going on with it and its
Yeah,
existence, giving people that tools. I mean, it seems sort of natural in a sense if you give everyone such a tool like this, then it was almost bound to happen.
yeah, true. Because it's such a powerful tool, I believe. And that the problem with that is power can corrupt, and you have to be very, very careful with it. So, which discretion is not something that comes easy to people, I believe. So, yeah.
Yeah. Especially in situations where you're sort of just doom scrolling or going through minute long videos, you don't really have time to pay attention to whether the thing you're looking at is AI or not.
True, true. And also, you don't, I mean, what I said about, questioning everything, but you don't want to always keep doing it. So then what do? You just go ahead with it, and, you just consume whatever's on your screen. And I think that's just changing how we look at content, the kind of content we find, the things that we find interesting. And yeah,
Yeah, yeah. So, on a on a note closer to journalism, how do you think AI's misinformation changes the way journalism is, or if it does at all?
listen, I think it definitely makes it more difficult, because you have to, I mean, I come back to what I said before. You have to question, you have to check. What happens with AI a lot of times is it what you said, yeah, chat GPT hallucinations. A lot of the things that AI tells you are not true. And if you're not somebody who likes to verify and rectify things, because what happens in journalism also is you're under so much pressure, to push out as many stories as you can, to always have something new on your website, that because time is such a huge factor, because you want to be the first one to tell people the things, you want to be the first to break a news. What happens is you're under so much pressure, that it's very easy to slip and just write whatever's ChatGPT is trying to tell you. You put in an idea, you tell them, okay, just give me like a 300-word story with it quickly, and ChatGPT might just introduce um, random facts into the story that you've not put, and that becomes, so you have to take your time to see, and you have to take your time to read through and figure out what they've put and what they've not put.
Oh yeah, especially when AI is telling you things that seem much more interesting to write about than what's actually going
Yeah,
on.
absolutely. Sorry. Yes.
So, on a different note, I'm just wondering about some of your goals. Like, where do you see yourself in like 1 year, 5 years, 10 years?
Oh God, I don't know, honestly. Um, Hopefully, still a journalist, and hopefully, still writing on what the consumer sector. I think it's something that I'd really enjoy doing. So, in the consumer sector, I would like to say, um, hopefully, still writing and still happy with what I'm doing, and not forced to change anything about the work that I do. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not somebody who plans for the future. I mean, I can't look 10 years into the future and have professional goals, even personal goals for that matter. But yeah, no. I just want to be in the consumer sector, I think. Yeah.
I still think those are great goals. Um,
Thank you.
for what it's worth. What advice would you have to someone who's getting into journalism?
Think again. And if you really want to be a journalist, be a good one. Don't be somebody. I think I feel like I'm not even old enough to give any advice, but just I hope you come with curiosity, and I hope your curiosity never dies, and that you're hungry for more, and that you're willing to go looking for things. Yeah, just that. And think again before you want to get into journalism. It's a great profession, I think, but you really, really need to be passionate about it to sustain yourself. Long working hours, bad working conditions.
Yeah. So that's all the questions I have to ask you. Are there any questions you'd like to ask me?
I wanted to know what you're doing and, how does this project, if you could tell me a little bit more about the project that you're doing. Yeah.
Yeah, so I basically started this channel with the help of my dad because I wanted to learn about more career options, a lot of career options, especially now as I'm getting into high school.
Oh,
So,
wow.
yeah, since I started, I've gotten to learn about a ton of career options, especially those that are outside of what I would consider because, my dad's in tech, so tech seemed to be the most it was the most I could know about. But by using this channel, I get to interview people for tons of different professions and careers, and I get to learn a lot more. And I hope by posting it on YouTube, anyone who sees the videos could also get to learn about them.
Understood. Would you, so what are the kind of careers that you found interesting until now, beyond what you were looking at?
I feel like all of them have been very interesting. I mean, I don't know. I think there's so much work that everyone puts into everything they do, and it's always really, really, really fascinating to learn about.
Understood. What do you, how does high school work? I mean, do you, like, here we pick subjects and that's what we study, but what is it like there? What's the,
Yeah, so here I think we still maintain most of the subjects between I guess English, math, science, physical
okay,
education, other language, so foreign language, and then English. So, and here we basically maintain those. What we do usually is we have like a set of requirements. So, for example, I have to take 4 years of English. So, all 4 years of
oh,
my high school, I will take English regardless of what else I will do. And within a subject like math, I can take electives. I can advance myself. I can stay at some level, right? Like honors courses, accelerated
okay.
courses. So,
Oh, wow, that's interesting.
yeah, so that's usually how it works. And for some, there's completely a wide range of electives, like physical education. There's just basically a full range of electives, or science is probably a better example, where once you complete a main path of a couple of years of some of the standard courses, you decide to take any electives between advanced physics or advanced, I can't recall, but there's a ton of different advanced courses you would choose from.
What
So,
about social sciences? Do you guys study that
yeah.
history?
So within English courses tend to have a bunch of these electives where you can study
Okay.
histories of things like race, gender, sexuality, and there's tons of classes like that. Oh, religion too.
Oh, wow. Okay. What happens in India is, I mean, I'm guessing but we have a separate subject called SST, which is social studies, which eventually branches out into three. There's history, political science, and geography. And I mean, that's uh, compulsory until the 10th standard, and then after which for the last 2 years of your high school is when you choose your subjects and
Mm-hmm.
you sort of,
Yeah.
um, yeah,
Here
enter.
the specialization like that
Yeah.
happens in college basically.
Okay. All right. Interesting. That's interesting. I'm a journalist, so I'll keep asking you questions. So if you want to, yeah.
Yeah. Do you have more questions? You can go ahead.
No, I was just curious about what you wanted, what were you looking at as a career option and why?
I definitely lean more towards STEM in the sense that um, math has basically been my thing
Oh,
for
wow.
for so long. Like math is the thing I'm good at, and
Yeah,
I excel in math, and I take the more advanced courses.
right.
So, and science I've also do pretty well at. So I'm definitely leaning more towards STEM, especially now that I'm getting
Understood.
more into CS and computer science. But I'd be lying if I say social issues and things like journalism didn't also interest me a lot. So,
That's okay. That's nice. I think that's about it. So that's all the questions that I had. Yeah.
all right. Thank you so much for taking this time to meet with me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Good luck.
Thank you for watching today's episode of Narrative Tales. If you enjoyed, check out some of my other content as well.